Hi there, it is Jo from Minerva, and today I'm adding to our Fabric Masterclass where we look at a particular type of fabric. This series is linked to the Minerva Fabric Guide, which I will show you towards the end of the video. It's a comprehensive guide of the 70 different base cloths that we sell on our website, and it gives you lots of characteristics and samples of the fabric so that you can feel it before you buy it online. Today's masterclass is all about broadcloth. So when you look on our website, you might look for cotton in the drop-down list, but cotton is quite a generic word for lots of different types of cotton and weave and surface finishes. So you will see cotton broken down into more components. So there's poplin, there's polycotton, there's broadcloth, there's bark cloth. Some of them are mixed with other fibres. So you won't just see the word cotton as a fabric subtype. Broadcloth is a light to medium weight cotton fabric. It's really stable. So this is the selvage edge, and it's really stable. So you would have your grain line on your pattern going down the fabric. Because it's made on a loom and it's woven with weft and warp threads, then you get a little bit of give across the cross grain. And if you cut it on the bias, you'll get lots of stretch on the bias. So when you're cutting out, you need to make sure that you put your pattern pieces in the way that you want the fabric to behave. Broadcloth is called broadcloth historically because the looms that it was made on were really broad. It was called a broad loom. So what came off it was a broadcloth. It was historically made in wool. So you had a really densely woven wool that was really warm. But now you'll see it as a cotton fibre. Can get mixes, but it's mostly 100% cotton. Because it's 100% cotton, you'll need to pre-wash it, so you'll get a little bit of fraying from that woven nature of the fabric, and you'll be able to see a little bit of the weave, but it's really smooth. You can't see it as much as you see the weave on linen or you see the weave on canvas. Let's have a little bit of a closer look at the broadcloth so that you can see it's got quite a matte finish. It's not shiny, it's not got a smooth coated surface. It's quite a structured fabric, so the fabric will stay in particular shapes, which makes it good for gathering or puff sleeves or any kind of structured garment. You can just about see the weave there. It's really fine, it's a smooth fabric, and it's nice against your skin. It's that natural cotton finish. You can also see really nice highlights and shadows in the fabric when it's moved into different positions. You'll definitely see it when the fabric is gathered up. Let's look a little bit more closely at what it can do. Today the fabric that I'm using is Minerva's core range broadcloth, and it comes in 50 different colours, around, it might even be a bit more, 50 different colours. So you can use it to mix and match with lots of things. So you might use this cotton as the lining on something that's got a patterned outer, so say bags, makeup bags, that kind of thing. You might use it as a contrast colour if you're doing some colour blocking, or if you were doing some sort of stash busting where you were using up some pattern print fabric and you wanted to mix in a plain fabric to make your fabric go further or to give a pleasing design. I'm going to show you the machine setup. It's really simple. I'm going to show you a few techniques that you can do with cotton, and that might help you then to choose a pattern that will enhance the techniques that I'm showing you. It's suitable for homeware and dressmaking, but you need to be careful what you choose it for dressmaking because it does have particular characteristics. It's an ideal fabric for beginners. It doesn't shift around when you're cutting it out. It's easy to sew, press and finish, and we're going to take a look at some of those techniques. I'm using a simple pattern today. It's the Grainline Studio Scout Tee. It's a woven t-shirt top pattern. It doesn't have any darts in, so if you have a larger bust bigger than a B cup, then you'll probably need to do a full bust adjustment, but you can check that out in my video here. It shows you how to make the darts a different shape, and also how to add a little bit of length if you're using some of the space here for your bust. but it's a good one for me to do. It's easy to handle under the machine, and I can show you on the cutting table the basic shapes. It's a simple pattern. It has a front piece, a back piece, a small sleeve and a neck piece. I've folded my fabric selvage to selvage because that way I get the straight grain running down my top, and I get a little bit of give, not very much in broadcloth, just a tiny little bit across the bust. So the cross weave is working with the cross nature of the body parts. Just to get the best out of my fabric, instead of folding it in half and needing a very long run of fabric and then having lots left over, I've folded the 2 selvages into the centre. It gives me 2 fold lines, one for the front t-shirt and one for the back t-shirt piece. You can cut out broadcloth with a rotary cutter and pattern weights, or you can use pins and scissors. If you're new to sewing, you could cut out with pinking shears. That way you haven't got to worry about the finishing of your seams at the end. I'm going to use pinking shears because it's nice and quick for a video demonstration. As with all woven fabrics, you need to make sure that you're not switching up the direction when you're cutting. So I'm keeping that cross grain stretch or give, so that I make sure that when I put my sleeve piece on, this grain line is running on the strong grain, and I'm just getting that extra bit of give going around my arms. Spare bits of broadcloth are ideal for any kind of patchwork. You can use them to make facings on the inside of garments if you haven't got enough of your print fabric. They're also great to save as pocket bags, so that they harmonise with your fabric, but it will be a piece that's on the inside of your pocket. So those are always useful little pieces to keep, especially in solid colours. A good marking tool for cotton is a chalk pencil. You can sharpen the edges, get a really good clean mark. You can mark any pattern markings. You can use it to make darts. You can also manipulate the fabric grain on broadcloth and all cottons, poplin, polycotton, broadcloth, batik, all of those woven fabrics, by folding the fabric on the 45-degree angle to work on the bias of the fabric. That means the weave can behave in a slightly different way. And for the grain line Studio Scout Tee, you'll need to cut some pieces for your neckband on this stretchy grain. First, let's take a look at the machine setup. So I've got a universal needle, no special needle needed for this light to medium weight cotton. I'm using a Gutterman thread in the top and the bottom. It's good to have the same quality thread in the top spool and the bobbin, because if you have 2 different ones, then the strength of the one thread will pull on the other, and sometimes you get breakages, and you'll also get sometimes like really uneven stitches. Right, I'm going to thread up and then we're going to sew our broadcloth. It doesn't matter if you're using a intermediate or experienced fabric or a beginner fabric like broadcloth. It's always a great idea to do a test square first, just to check your needle's not bent or blunt and that your machine is working, especially if you move your machine and put it out on a table. Things rattle and move and things hop out of a take-up lever or out of the tension discs. So always do a little test piece first. I'm sewing broadcloth on a straight stitch, stitch length 2.5, and I've got a Gutterman thread in the top and the bottom. So always start with your needle down so that it doesn't hop the fabric onto the feed dogs in an unusual way. Keep your tails at the back and sew gently to start, and then you can pick up some speed. I'm just sewing a sample, but if you're garment making or making bags and homeware, then you will need to back tack, take a couple of stitches forward and a couple of stitches back to secure the end of your seam line. This is the seam. Check it when you peel it open that you have got the tension correct. If that's showing the stitches, then you need to change your tension. Mine's on 4. The lower the number, the looser. The higher the number, the tighter the stitches will be. You don't want to have this rippling, you need it to be nice and flat. Let's press the seam open and we can look at how we can finish broadcloth. I've used pinking shears here, which will finish the edge. It's not very permanent, but it will reduce the fraying along that seam. So you could try pinking shears if you're new. You can zigzag the edge. This will stop the seam from fraying. Don't do it too close to the edge. If you do it close to the edge, then you'll sort of pull all of this in, and then when you press it, you'll get a sort of ridge on the right side. So that's probably a little bit close to the seams. You probably need it a little bit closer to the raw edge. But if you zigzag, it will stop the seam from fraying. If you don't have a zigzag, so say you're sewing on a vintage sewing machine, for example, or you're not very keen on using your zigzag, you can do a straight stitch seam finish. That always looks really neat, but you do need enough seam allowance to do that. If your seam allowances are quite small on a 1 centimetre pattern, then you might struggle to do that. You can also overlock your edges if you have an overlocker, or indeed you can sew your whole garment on an overlocker using that to put the seams together. If you add gathers to broadcloth, you'll get a really strong gather. So if you're making children's wear, it's ideal for that sort of skirt part of the pattern, for dresses where you really get quite a full skirt. If you gather up broadcloth, you'll get a full skirt, you'll get full puff sleeves, you get nice features here if you are gathering on the yoke, but it will not drape. So if you're gathering across a yoke, you will get a little bit of fullness there. So you've already got a large bust, then you might not want some extra fullness coming from the fabric. Let's take a look at a gathering stitch. When you're gathering broadcloth, you probably need to do 2 rows of gathering stitches, otherwise you'll get quite an uneven gather. So make sure that your stitch length is on the longest it will go. Don't back tack, because you need the threads to be mobile, so that when you pull the threads, nothing is jammed or locked at the end. This is the right side of my fabric. I'm going to use the bobbin threads to pull up. Let's see how the broadcloth works. You can see it makes quite a thick gather. This is on the straight grain, so the weave is struggling to gather up. There we go. But you can see it's really firm. It holds its structure as part of a garment. That's going to give you quite a gathered 3D voluminous shape. So that's the effect of gathering on broadcloth. Because of the crisp properties of the weave, then you can make really good pin tucks in cotton, especially this broadcloth cotton, because you'll be able to finger press it and keep making your pleats. At the cutting stage, I drew some lines on here with a chalk pencil, so let's have a go at sewing them, and I'm also going to show you a little bit of the press settings on the iron. Broadcloth makes great pin tucks. All cottons do and poly cottons do. That stable weave means you can get a straight line without it stretching out of shape. I haven't pressed this one yet, I've just finger pressed it to one side so that I can create the next one. So I'm using the chalk line that I made at the cutting table. I'm using my foot marker to find the position, and I've got my machine stitch length back to 2.5. If you finger press broadcloth, it's quite effective, or you can use a quilter's tool. And that saves you having to get up and down from your machine to the iron. It keeps those pin tucks out of the way so that you can create the next one. I haven't measured these are just sample ones, but now that these have all been pressed, you can see they're really, really crisp, those first two particularly. And you need to use a hot iron, so you use your iron on cotton and you can add some steam. Broadcloth also makes very effective darts because you can really steam out the fabric and get a really nice bust shape, especially if you want like a slightly curved dart. So think about techniques that have a final press or clear structured lines. Because of the way that the iron presses the broadcloth, then we're going to take a look at making some pleats. I've made a couple of sample pleats there. I just want to show you the crispness and how the fabric behaves when it is folded and creased into different positions. Here's some broadcloth pressed up into some pleats. So I haven't sewn them, I've just marked them. So you've got an inverted box pleat and you can see how much you get those highlights and shadows with those folds, and that can be really effective on the bottom of a skirt. So if you have a waistbanded skirt or a bodiced dress, it's really great. You can also use it on sleeves, on a shirt dress where you have a sort of an open feature on a sleeve. And this one here is the pleat where the pleat is on the top, but you can see it's really, really crisp. So any patterns with pleats will work well in broadcloth. Because of that pressing quality, it's often used by patchworkers as their solid colour when they're working, because they can really press and get the joins of squares and triangles and half square triangles, and they can get really clean lines on their patchwork. Okay, with all that knowledge under my belt, today I'm going to sew up a Scout tee. The Grainline Studio Scout tee is a woven t-shirt pattern. It doesn't have darts in, so you may need to do a full bust adjustment there to ensure that you're getting a good fit across the bust, and do check the arm circumference because that's quite slim fitting. I'm going to put the top together. If I come across any little techniques or things that I haven't shown you so far, I'll dip in and give you some new information. I'm not showing you how to make the Scout tee today. If you want to know a few more details on how to put that pattern together, you can check out this sew along here. But today I'm just using that pattern as my fabric sample for broadcloth. I'm going to start putting my Scout tee together. I've practiced a test piece so I know that the seam is going to work well, and because it's a sample I'm just going to leave my pink and sheared edge. It'll still be perfectly wearable, and we're going to put it together. You can also use this craft cotton cut on the bias to make a binding, and I'm going to put a binding around the neck. The broadcloth can be cut into bias strips. I'm adding it to the Scout tee. I've used a batik version of a cotton. It folds and it will work its way around the curves. So in this case, I used a batik cotton, but a broadcloth cotton will do exactly the same thing, but you must cut this fabric on the bias. If you don't, you'll get all ripples around this edge here. Cutting it on the bias means that the fabric can move in a curved position. Broadcloth also makes great patch pockets. In this case, I've used a batik, but you could have just as easily made a really neat broadcloth pocket because it presses so well. When you're hemming broadcloth, you'll get a really nice press, so make sure you press up your hems before you sew them and pin them. So I'm going to fold up 1 centimetre. I'm going to use my hot hemmer, which helps me measure as I go along. And once you've got the press, you can then turn your hem again. You can use the hot hammer again if you need to make a deeper hem. But this fabric does press very well, and that's another reason quilters like it. And it's a beginner friendly fabric. So this is the top finished. It's just a cotton top. I'm going to use it as part of a pyjama set, so this is going to be my top half. I like to wear natural fibres for my sleepwear, so you can see cotton makes a great binding if it's cut on the bias. It makes neat patch pockets because you can get a good press on it. It makes a good top stitched hem. Didn't need the overlocker or anything because it presses up neat and flat. I've overlocked my seams, but you could just carry on using the pink and sheared edge. But let's take a look what other people have been sewing with broadcloth. Broadcloth makes a really good lining, so it's perfect for backpacks, makeup bags, storage boxes, lining coats, possibly not sleeves, but for the main parts of jackets it's perfect. It's also good for embroidery, so if you do hand stitching it makes a good base cloth. As I mentioned before, it's really well liked by quilters because you can crease it, it's a natural fibre, it's got a nice matte finish and it comes in lots of different colours. Broadcloth can be used as an underlayer, so here for something like a soft bustier or a soft corset, it works really well as a lining behind a sheer fabric. And it's also great for all kinds of cosplay, so any kind of jackets, lightweight jackets, the outer or the lining. And it's good for menswear in this cosplay case or as women's wear. So here you can see those gathers that we talked about, the fullness that they create in that historical skirt. Broadcloth is also good for finer details, so if you're looking for a contrast fabric or one clear colour, it works well for that. Here it's been used as a collar, so it's got a nice stiffness. Broadcloth is great for men's shirts and women's shirts because you can get a really clear press on the collar and the collar stand, and in this case you've got some really interesting sleeve pleats. Broadcloth makes great skirts and trousers for summer. It's a breathable fabric. You can get that sort of really light styling that you get from jeans in a summer weight fabric. Here's the top finished. I've paired it with my batik pyjama shorts. This is the Jamie pyjama bottoms pattern in the shorts version. Similar type of fabric handling actually, so this makes a good gathered elastic casing, which broadcloth would too. Broadcloth is just a little bit of a heavier weight than batik. Batik tends to be a lighter cotton finish. This is ideal for summer pyjamas, or indeed you could make this with trousers and make a full summer cotton cord set. You can find out more information about different fabric types from our Minerva fabric guide. It is a definitive and comprehensive guide to fabric, fibres and base cloths. It's a binder style book. It's not a project book with things to make in it. It's an informative book all about different types of fabric. first part of the book tells you all about how fabrics are made. This will help you to understand the hand of the fabric that you'd like to buy. There's information about stretch fabrics, woven fabrics, how to cut fabrics, how to wash fabrics, and some tips on what to consider when you're buying fabric online. The next part of the book tells you all about different fibres. So if you can get some knowledge about the types of fibre content in fabrics, that will help you also to decide how they will behave and what characteristics they will have. The final section of the book is an comprehensive alphabetical guide of different base cloths. There's a double page spread and a pack of 70 base cloths, sample pieces for you to put into the book so that you can feel the hand of the fabric. On the broadcloth page we can see it's a beginner fabric. We can see the fibre contents, and it may vary, so you need to check that out on the fabric description. Some interesting information about the characteristics of the fabric, and that will help you to choose whether it's suitable for the project you have in mind. There's the sample piece. Some details here and sewing tips that run alongside today's video. And of course there is a QR code on every page, and that's really useful because if you scan this it will filter out all broadcloths to your page, and that stops you having to search through lots and lots and lots of different fabrics. If you're interested in broadcloth, the QR code will take you straight to a filtered version of those. There's some fantastic sewing inspiration throughout the folder, lots of great photography. If you'd like to learn more about the fabric guide, you can find a full video on that by both me and one from Vicky on our YouTube channel. I hope you've gained some new knowledge there with a new fabric to you, which might be broadcloth. If you've used it before, we'd love to see anything that you've made in it. So do share your makes over at Minerva, make a free account and take a photograph, give us a little description and show us what you have been up to. It's quite deceiving, isn't it? The word broadcloth makes it sound like it's going to be a really thick fabric like canvas, but actually it refers to the loom, and it's a light medium weight cotton. It's got a lot of different uses. If you're thinking of choosing some broadcloth, then look out for Vicky's video, which is coming up, where she takes you through some pattern inspiration for using broadcloth. It might go really well hand in hand with today's video. If you'd like some more sewing content, then you can stay at the YouTube channel and check out some other videos. There are sew-alongs, pattern pairings, learn to sew videos, new releases. So if something new's out, then Vicky might give you a walkthrough. There's some really inspirational stuff there. If not, then we'd like to see you here again pretty soon for another Fabric Masterclass. Thanks very much. See you later.